rogue Mega Evolved Pokemon are in pain, and according to the Alolan Pokédex, that's due to their unnatural changes. However, that Pokédex only includes Mega Evolutions before Legend CA, so what's causing the new ones to suffer? Mega Dragalge's kelp has begun to decorate much more of its body. Even the crest atop of its head has expanded into 6 cape-like fronds, and its antennae now each bear a purple orb. Due to its poor speed, Dragalge relies on camouflage to hunt its prey. When a Pokemon begins to feed on the seaweed it has chosen to hide in, Dragalge waits for an opening and then ambushes them using its poisonous liquid. However, Mega Evolution has changed this toxin into a powerful substance, which causes the regenerative powers within cells to run wild. While Dragalge has grown a natural resistance to it, the surrounding biodiversity has not. As a result, seaweed begins to die out, and Pokemon start to flee the area. Now, whenever Dragalge searches for more food, its toxins spread throughout the new water faster than it can reach them. Thus, it has been condemned to a slow but painful death of starvation. After Mega Evolving, Skarmory's metallic silver body changes into a golden color. Its talons also grow much larger, and the red feathers on its now spikier wings turn dark blue. Since Skarmory's body has become lighter, its wings can't have actually changed into real, heavier than steel gold. Thus, Skarmory's evolution must have subjected its metal coating to such an intensive heat that all of its impurities were burned away. Unlike Skarmory's traditional once-a-year shedding, this process refined its wings even further. However, to achieve this, its outer plating was forcibly expanded, resulting in its inner body being compressed. Furthermore, while this new form allows Skarmory to fly faster than the speed of sound, the shockwaves it releases at these speeds causes its bones to rattle. Over time, the shaking of its frame, as well as the burning of its metal, begin to destroy Skarmory's body. Mega Evolution has resulted in colossal wings bursting from the crown of Dragonite's head. Conversely, the wings on its back have shrunk and its now pearl-tipped tail grew much longer. Thanks to its antenna, Dragonite is able to hyper-tune to the emotions of those around it. As a result, whenever it flies over the ocean, it's easily able to detect people drowning. Since Mega Evolution has replaced its antenna with wings that act as more powerful feelers, Dragonite can now sense even more lives in need of saving. Before evolving, Dragonair used the pearls on its neck and tail to release excess amounts of energy from within its body. This causes its body to brighten and give off an aura that changes the weather in its vicinity. However, when Mega Dragonite's much greater power releases instead, uncontrollable raging storms begin to awaken around it. Thus, whenever Dragonite soars over the sea, it ends up claiming more lives than it has saved. When Mega Evolution took hold, Froslass nearly doubled in size, causing it to become much taller. Even her horns twisted into sharp Oni-like points, and her kimono-like body lengthened, flowing to the ground in layers of frost. Long ago, a woman vanished into a blizzard and never returned. With her final breath, her soul fused with the spirit of snow and became Froslass. Clinging to her past life, she took human form once more, living peacefully with a husband and their children. But one day, her husband followed the drifting snow and witnessed her true form. Froslass, fearing to be seen, spared his life and made him swear to keep her secret. Yet he could not silence his curiosity and confessed to his wife, whom he believed bore an uncanny resemblance to the spirit he had met. Betrayed, his wife vanished, granting him an answer he wished he had never found. Though men now collapse in fear before Mega Froslass, she still strives to let those she meets escape alive. However, her newfound power has made the spectral cold around her too fierce. This has caused all who draw near her to be frozen where they stand. Thus, Froslass now forever wanders the endless snowscapes alone. Mega Evolution has tightened Hawlucha's muscles into dense knotted cords, hidden beneath a newly formed golden chestplate. Its wings have become much sharper and more feathers around its neck, legs and waist grew out as well. Hawlucha typically exhausts its opponents through evasion. However, as its instinctual nature causes it to show off before it can land an attack, if Hawlucha isn't fast enough, its enemies might still recover. While its training has helped reduce this, with Mega Evolution amplifying its resistance and thus also its arrogance, Hawlucha now dares its opponents to strike its body repeatedly. Then only once Hawlucha begins to weaken does it hurl itself from the sky in a single flying press. Since this move is both a flying and fighting type attack, its versatility does leave opponents in quite a weakened state. Yet this blow alone rarely has enough power to fell them entirely, and so when they rise again, Hawlucha collapses as it no longer has any strength left to stand. Mega Evolution has caused Victreebel's acid to start producing at an uncontrollable rate. This overflowing liquid has contorted its form, swelling its body into a tense bulging pouch. Left with no other alternative, Victreebel must bind its gaping mouth shut with its own vines. Desperate for food, it frantically sweeps its enlarged leaf through the air, spreading a sweet scent to lure in prey. However, its mutation has cursed this feat to be impossible, twisting the aroma into a potent fume that disorients all who breathe it in. Together, these changes have condemned Victreebel to frantic, desperate hunts. Driven by the boiling acid churning within its body, it tackles its foes head-on. Once its victims collapse, Mega Victreebel dissolves them with its now hyper-corrosive acid. Yet, unlike before, where it could swallow its prey whole, the meager remains now barely soothe its gnawing hunger. Mega Evolution has invigorated Drampa's body, restoring the youth it had long since lost. As a result, the gentle clouds that form around it have darkened into raging storms, and its once kind face has twisted into one far more ferocious. On rare occasions, Drampa descends from the mountains to play with children living in the town below. Possibly as a way of helping quell the anger that has long haunted Drampa's past, it aims to protect these children as if they were its own. While its newfound vitality helped Drampa better achieve this by renewing its control over the weather, it also reignited the fury that had long slumbered deep within its heart. As a result, Drampa, with its neck held high and claws extended out, unleashes its wrath onto those that harmed its friends. Yet in this rampage, Drampa loses control, destroying not only its enemies but everything caught in its storm. Thus, when its senses finally return, Drampa finds itself yearning once more for the compassion it spent years trying to comprehend. As a quick side note, there's something about the Tower of Mastery and Professor Sycamore that I'd like your opinion on. According to a woman in the tower, Sycamore once trained there to study Mega Evolution. However, he left not long after, believing he didn't have what it takes. Is it possible that Sycamore couldn't bear seeing his Pokemon suffer? Perhaps witnessing that pain firsthand made him question whether the process was worth it. If you have any thoughts or alternative ideas about why he might have left, be sure to share them in the comments. If you'd also like to support this channel's growth, I'd really appreciate it if you'd consider leaving a like and subscribing. Mega Evolution has intensified Malamar's psychic powers, resulting in the expansion of its brain and the release of a radiant glow. On top of this, its body has grown longer, and the tentacles now extending from its collar-like shoulders also reach out much further. Though Malamar's elongated body grants it the ability to more easily resist attacks from afar, some of its much thinner features, especially its tentacles, also became too delicate to block attacks directly. Thus, its enhanced elasticity merely compensates for a flaw in its new design. Should its trainer give an order it disagrees with, Malamar's amplified hypnotic power allows it to not only control them, but also completely override their personality and memories. Unsurprisingly, Malamar's long, powerful tentacles can resist the attacks of any force known in the world. Since weaker minds have always longed to obey this Pokemon, through those same extensions, our friend Malamar now reaches out to the prey deemed privileged enough to worship it. Mega Evolution has stretched out Eelektross into a longer, more patterned shape. Large amounts of its mucus have been released to form two false electric, and even its eyes became more prominent. By sinking its fangs into prey, Eelektross drags them into the ocean. Then, much like other electric eels, it channels a steady current between its body and the surrounding water. However, as Mega Eelektross, each arm now carries an opposing charge, causing the electricity to arc directly between its limbs instead of flowing outward. Normally, its insulated body would direct most of this current safely through the water, protecting Eelektross from its own discharges. But with this new path, that resistance is rendered useless. Thus, when it now generates 10 times more electricity than before, Eelektross begins to feel those surges directly. Over time, the internal shocks inflict fatal burns that destroy its entire body. Through the power of Mega Evolution, Barbaracle has gained new units, turning it into a colony of 11 distinct Binnacle. Even the leader's face becomes much more distinctive, and the rocks in which its members reside have also grown larger. After two Binnacle find a suitably sized rock, they adhere themselves to it and cooperate with one another to gather seaweed that has washed up during high tides. Over time, more Binnacle join together, until a total of 7 all inhabit the same rock. In desperate need for more space, they evolve into Barbaracle and form a unified body with one leader that acts as the head. When they then become Mega Barbaracle, those limbs continue to retain minds of their own. However, while its added members do help Barbaracle better confuse its opponents, they also keep its head extremely busy. As a result, that constant stress, as well as Barbaracle's overall much heavier load, have begun to weaken its rock-like foundations. Thus, as it continues to toy with its prey, its rocks slowly begin to tear further, eventually turning it into a giant jumbled mess. Upon Mega Evolution, Clefable's wings bloom into radiant crescents. Its ears, now drooping beside it, have grown longer, and even the curled lock of its hair has taken on a hat-like shape. Descending to Earth on falling stars, Cleffa are torn from their kind. Alongside other fallen, they dance beneath the full moon and evolve into Clefairy, whose newly formed wings begin to absorb moonlight. Then, once exposed to a moonstone, they become Clefable, and those wings unfurl further. Now gathering even more energy, the wings loosen gravity around them, helping the Clefable draw a little closer to the home they still remember. After a Clefable has undergone Mega Evolution, their wings begin to absorb moonlight in overwhelming abundance. The gathered energy then further bends the gravity surrounding Clefable, suspending it into the air. Yet, bound by the short durations of Mega Evolution, its ascent always falls short, and so Clefable drifts beneath the same moon it longs to touch, its wish forever just out of reach. Mega Scolipede has become coated in a thick plate of armor. Just like how its now dramatically larger horns have become fashioned with alternating stripes, so have its two tails. Scolipede's hardened shell actually comes from its previous evolution Whirlipede. Back then, that shell benefited Whirlipede by acting as a layer of protection, while also helping it store up energy with need for evolution. However, as this encasement began growing over Scolipede's chest, parts of it were broken off by its foreclaws. As a result, the luminescent poison within began to enter Scolipede's bloodstream. Over time, this venom spread throughout its entire body, and eventually even reached its mind, causing Scolipede's viciousness to hone it into a mindless predator. Yet, since its shell now also weighs Scolipede down, it can no longer keep up with its prey. Thus, Scolipede slowly becomes a mindless beast, whose only wish is to destroy. Mega Falinks' leader, known as the Brass, has grown a much larger horn, while two of the troopers acting as its arms now resemble that of a spear and shield. Together they form Mega Falinks' upper formation, and rest on top of the three remaining members, taking on the role of its torso and legs. Before Mega evolving, Falinks' leader would use its extendable horn to signal its loyal troopers into changing formation. These include the column formation, a single file line protecting them from all angles, the no retreat formation, a triangular shape helping Falinks prepare its attacks, and the dispatch formation, a strategy where the Brass dispatches its troops, instructing them to encircle and attack their prey. These techniques depend solely on the cooperation between Falinks' members, which remains to be the case even after it Mega evolves to take on the ultimate battle formation. However, while this new form has made Falinks much more versatile, the unfair placement of some of its members has made them question their loyalty to the Brass. Over time, Falinks' relations slowly begin to weaken. Thus, if this trend were to continue, Falinks could threaten its own chances of survival. Mega Evolution has transformed Chandelure into an ornate two-tiered Chandelure. Many more S-shaped arms have extended out of its body, and the top of its head is now covered by an even larger purple flame. By waving its arms around, Chandelure hypnotizes targets from which it hopes to absorb spirits from. Then it uses those spirits as fuel to keep its flames lit. However, as Chandelure's now much larger flames require far greater amounts of that fuel, as a way to compensate, they now also draw in the hatred from its surroundings. As a result, one of Chandelure's eyes has transformed into a purple mirror. While this lets it look into the afterlife, it also pulls the souls it has burned directly into that realm. And because Chandelure's flames must constantly absorb surrounding energy to stay alight, this process continues without end. Thus, Chandelure, once oblivious to the fate of its victims, must now bear witness to their suffering. Mega Starmie's elongated limbs and lower body have given it a much more humanoid appearance. Its primary color has also turned into a slightly brighter shade of purple, and 4 of the prongs on its coarse casing have grown longer. Occasionally, Starmie breaches the ocean's surface and releases pulses towards the sky. While it remains unknown why they do this, due to the fact that they also use their core as a method of communication between other members of its species, it's possible that Starmie sends its signals skywards as some sort of message. With the help of Mega Evolution, Starmie began to mimic human behavior. As a result, it stopped gathering data from the deep ocean floors, and instead fixed its gaze on human activity. Since Starmie's primary features, and thus also most of its objectives, remain unchanged, Starmie likely seeks to communicate with humans, but also gather data on them. Thus, some fear that it might actually aim to supplant humanity. Mega Excadrill's blades have grown enormous, elongating into 3 separate drill-like bits. Triangular metal plates now cover its much rounder body, and even its its nose has grown slightly bigger. Normally, Excadrill would lock its steel claws together to form a drill capable of digging through the Earth's surface. Then, once it tunnels deep underground, would it create maze-like nesting ground safe from the predators roaming above. However, as its claws have now become a much more destructive drill, their power has forced Excadrill to create homes which are much too large. As a result, they often collapse in on themselves. Seeking out new ways to raise its young, Excadrill begins to roam the surface, relying instead on its drill for protection. Yet as that drill now also covers more of its face, it lacks the ability to properly watch its surroundings. Thus, Excadrill easily gets ambushed by those same predators it intended on hiding from. With the drillbird watches over now at risk, Excadrill's population slowly begins to decline. Mega Evolution has caused Scrafty's shed to turn white and grow much tougher. The top part of its hood now splits into multiple strips at the back, and the bottom has torn to form V-shaped pockets. Before Mega evolving, Scrafty wears the shed of its previous evolution. Over time, that shed became more rubbery, and eventually formed into a sort of cloak. Since shed skin appears white when a new layer, one lacking pigmentation cells, begins to form underneath an old one, Mega Evolution must have forced Scrafty into shedding once again. Yet, at the same time, its previous shed doesn't become brittle. This is normally a sign of incomplete shedding, an event in which an animal shed remains trapped within its own skin. If this continues to happen, multiple layers begin to merge into something much more leather-like. Thus, Mega Scrafty's own shedded skin slowly begins to cover more of its body, cutting off blood flow for many of its limbs and ultimately causing them to fall off. As Mega Pyroar, its mane becomes massively enlarged, with the uppermost section extending down to its back. The red tufts on its mane now each bear a yellow stripe, and bright red markings have developed on its cheeks. Due to the distinctive differences between males and females, I'll explain what would happen if each gender were to suddenly Mega Evolve. Typically, around 3 related males form a coalition and establish a pride together. While its leader, the male with the largest mane, gets to mate with more of the pride's females, this usually only slightly reduces the other 2 males' chances. However, when one of them suddenly Mega Evolves, the females instinctively begin to favor that Pyroar even more. As a result, the other 2 males in the pride start to feel threatened, causing the group to slowly turn on one another. The pride's females are responsible for protecting the Litleo cubs and teaching them how to hunt. They also work together to bring down prey for the entire pride. If one of them were to suddenly grow a much larger mane, the other females would immediately begin to treat her as a male. Consequently, as the males start to be viewed as less favorable by the females, they would feel their control slipping away. Ultimately, both of these outcomes create an unstable social dynamic. Over time, such a pride would begin to fall apart, leaving it vulnerable to attacks from rival prides. Mega Evolution has extended Feraligatr's back spike, forming it into an enormous serrated hood-like fin. Additional spikes have torn through its arms as well, and even some of the scales found on its body have ripped open, revealing their greyish undersides. By clasping its hands and fin together, Feraligatr can form a massive false bite. Because this jaw swings shut when it stands on all fours, Feraligatr has to take on an upright position to avoid being blinded. However, since Mega Evolution hasn't changed Feraligatr's legs, they now buckle beneath its crushing weight. Feraligatr's normal hunting method requires it to go on land. Yet, as it no longer has enough strength to help it sprint, Feraligatr begins to stagger after its prey instead. When it finally catches up, it snatches down on them using its 10-foot power jaw. But this force, as well as the pressure that begins to build when Feraligatr violently shakes its head to tear up its prey, only further weakens its body. Unaware that this upright posture is crushing its bones, Feraligatr continues hunting as it once did. Over time, it slowly renders itself unable to move. When Mega Evolution took hold, Meganium's petals blossomed into 4 massive, colorful flowers around its neck. Even its legs have sprouted dark green foliage like frills, and its antennae have now become 1, curling inwards to form bud-like tips. Throughout its lifetime, Meganium's petals release a scent that goes from sweet to spicy to finally maturing as a calming fragrance. However, due to the uncontrollable amounts of sunlight absorbed by Meganium's now much larger flowers, this same fragrance has become a far too powerful tranquilizer. When Meganium now attempts to bask in sunlight, Pokemon around it enter a carefree but rather dazed state. On top of that, Meganium also no longer has the capacity to store its light, resulting in it forcibly releasing its excess amounts as destructive solar beams. Thus, Meganium unwillingly became a Pokemon that lulls others into sleep, before striking them with supercharged solar beams. Mega Emboar's flames have grown far larger, engulfing most of its upper chest and shoulders. Its tusks have also sharpened, and new fur resembling a long braided hairstyle has sprouted from the top of its head. Before evolving, Pignite's body temperature would rapidly soar whenever it entered battle. Upon becoming Emboar, it grew powerful enough to withstand those flames. However, while Mega Evolution has helped shape those flames into a blazing serpentine spear, it also instilled in Emboar an overbearing confidence. Since its flames grow in response to desperate situations, when Emboar now charges into battles it would normally avoid, they begin to swell without limit. In time, Emboar's body can no longer endure the inferno it has created. Ultimately, it is consumed by its own blazing fireball. Mega Evolution secretes a gel-like membrane from Greninja's body, shaping it into a giant spinning water shuriken. Its body becomes mostly black and the fins on its head extend outward. Greninja's tongue is so long that it must wrap around its head. Since Greninja relies on stealth to hunt its prey, this adaptation helps it detect enemies through air movements. However, because Mega Greninja's new shuriken spins at such a speed that it seems to almost float in mid-air, its tongue actually risks being cut off. While Greninja can throw the shuriken away, its accelerated membrane regeneration immediately forms a new one in its place. Thus, to avoid injuring itself, Greninja clings to the shuriken upside down, though this has left it exposed and compromised its stealth. As a result, Greninja loses its element of surprise, reducing its chances of survival even after Mega Evolution wears off. Mega Delphox rides upon a large broomstick that is at its tip covered by a mass of flames. Its red fur has faded into a dark gradient and the now longer white fur on its chest has formed into a flowing beard. Throughout its life, Delphox relies on special revitalization twigs to restore its energy. As it evolves, it eventually begins using one as a wand. When Delphox gazes into its flame, it enters a state of deep focus that allows it to better channel its psychic power. However, with Mega Evolution greatly amplifying that power, to remain calm and composed, Delphox must depend on 2 additional branches that float around it. Delphox also uses these flames to disorient its opponents. While this helps protect its still fragile body, the flames also possess the ability to show those who gaze into them a glimpse of the future. In doing so, Delphox inadvertently grants its enemies the power to anticipate its movements. As a result, if Delphox fails to strike before its enemies, it might fall to their attacks instead. Mega Evolution has thickened the shell on Chesnaught's back. The fur beneath it has grown into a dense cape-like mantle, and white fur now runs along its entire torso. By covering its face, Chesnaught can enter a defensive stance to shield its allies. However, while its new shoulder armor and the fur on its back provide an additional layer of protection, they also slow it down. Theoretically, Chesnaught can prevent this from becoming a burden by removing its shoulder armor. This also allows it to wield them as powerful axe-like weapons. However, when in this form, the heavy spikes that begin to extend from their surface only further hinder Chesnaught's movement. Leaving them behind is not an option either, as doing so would mean abandoning its defense entirely. As a result, when Chesnaught refrains from attacking, it continues to carry them on its back, forcing it into a hunched posture that severely limits its mobility. Upon Mega Evolution, Eternal Flower Floette's flower absorbs a great amount of energy, resulting in it significantly increasing in size. With the help of its larger stem, that flower now also directly attaches itself to Floette's heart-shaped tip. 3,000 years ago, during the Great War in Kalos, AZ lost his beloved Floette. Overcome with grief, he constructed a machine that resurrected Floette and made them both immortal. This prevented Floette from being able to evolve. However, the many lives that were used to activate this machine instead granted it the power to Mega Evolve. As Floette must have known that many Pokemon were lost during its revival, it decided to leave AZ to wander the world alone. Hoping that by atoning for his wrongs he could reunite with his Pokemon, AZ constructed another device called Ange. This massive machine would rely on Mega Floette as a conduit, and then share its eternal life to those around it. However, AZ never considered that such large quantities of energy would cause Mega Floette to lose control. Thus, once activated, Ange actually ended up taking control, resulting in Floette's roots spreading all across its surroundings, and causing Pokemon to succumb to the painful effects of rogue Mega Evolutions. Born from the people's emotions during this unexpected crisis, Zygarde gained the ability to Mega Evolve. In this form, most of its armor has vanished, revealing the hexagonal cell-like structure of its body beneath. Due to this plating having shifted upward, a massive cannon attached to the 6 arms, which are now extending out of its chest. As the guardian of the Pokemon world's ecosystem, Zygarde only appears when it senses grave imbalance within a region. However, after restoring order, its energy becomes completely depleted. This was seen 5 years ago, after it protected Kalos from the ultimate weapon. In the aftermath, Zygarde scattered its cells across the Alola
Alola region to recover its strength. As Lysander notes, Mega Zygarde's new attack Nihil Light bears a striking resemblance to Alola's Z-moves, suggesting that the energy you drew from that region may have also given rise to this ability. By channeling that light, Zygarde was able to neutralize Hyper Rogue on Floette's beam. Thus, it ultimately saved all of Lumio City from destruction.
If there are other Pokemon you'd like me to cover in this format, then be sure to share your ideas in the comments. Thanks for watching.